Last weekend in Gavre and Brussels, the classifications came to a close. All focus is now on the summer, the road or the mountain bike, or complete rest in the off season. I've talked about numerous riders who have fairly large palmareses on the road, people like Van der Poel, Vos, Van Aert, Brandt. But with the road being the focus of the coming few months, it feels right to talk about somebody who this year stands a good chance of performing very well as well. And that man, from Intermarché for now, is Quinten Hermans. Quinten Hermans was born on the 29th of June 1995 in the Belgian city of Turnhout. His father, Wendy Hermans, was a Belgian junior cross-country running champion back in the late 80s. Quinten would be no stranger to the fields either. However, he'd prefer two wheels to his 2 feet. How exactly Hermans ended up racing cross, I don't actually know, but he's a Belgian kid growing up in the era of Sven Nys. I'd imagine that had an impact. The earliest information on Hermans racing outright available dates to the 2009-2010 season. Hermans would ride in the Nieuwelinge category, in which he would take 2 victories that year, a race in Nozegem and the Belgian national title. 12 months later, in his second season at the Nieuwelinge, he would double his victories. He defended his national title successfully and also won in Everzel, Lummel and Averboorde. By 2011 he became a proper crosser. He entered the junior categories, doing so riding for Telenet Fidea. Hermans' junior debut came at the Industrieprijs Bosduin Kalmthout, where he'd finish in impressive 6th place, only 30 seconds off the back of winner Mathieu van der Poel. Shortly after, he'd make his debuts in the Junior Super Prestige and Junior World Cup, finishing 11th in Ruddervoorde and 10th in Tabor. In November 2011, he would then make his debut at the European Championships, doing so with a 10th place finish in Lucca. Throughout the season, Hermans would keep on growing. He would take his first win in Ludelange, Luxembourg. At the Worlds in Koksijde, Hermans would just miss out on the podium in a 3-way sprint, finishing 4th behind France's Quinten Hermans. The following season, Quinten would suffer from the biggest problem any crosser has faced in recent years. He was in the same category as Mathieu van der Poel. Mathieu would simply win everything, and it forced Hermans to settle for 11 second places and another 2 thirds. Hermans would also finish second in the Super Prestige overall. In the big races, he would keep encountering other issues too. At the Euros in Ipswich, he only managed 9th, and in the Worlds in Louisville it was 8th. Even at the Belgian Nationals, a Van der Poel-less race, Hermans couldn't quite take the win. Yannick Peters this time got the best of him. This would mean Hermans graduated to the under-23 category with a handful of solid performances, but just 1 win to his name. Strangely, Hermans' elite debut came before his under-23 debut. His first race in the 2013 season was Cross Vegas, amongst the elites. Sven Nys would win, Hermans would finish 6th, just between Wout van Aert and Timothy Johnson. Hermans wouldn't wait much longer for his first elite podium either. That podium would come at a 4-way sprint in a cyclocross race called the International Cyclocross Finance Centre. It was held in Udica Prozne in Slovakia, and Hermans would finish 3rd. Despite claiming some solid elite results, Hermans struggled in his first under-23 year, not making the selections for the Worlds or the Euros. He would not podium an under-23 race, often struggling even for a top 10, despite the fact he would take a second elite podium in Luxembourg once more, at the Grand Prix Pétange. The 2014-15 season would show Quinten grow back to a decent level, being a regular top 10 fixture, aided somewhat by the decisions of Van Aert and Van der Poel to start racing elite. Hermans wouldn't win across this season, but would finish 2nd in the National Trophy Series in Southampton, behind British veteran rider Ian Field. Under-23 podiums followed in Koksijde, Essen, Middelkerke and the Nationals in Erpenmeren. It was the 2015-16 season where Hermans really came good in the under-23 category. He started his season with a 2nd place in Gieten, showing what was to come. Hermans romped to a first classification victory at under-23 level by winning the Koppenberg Cross. Not long after that he would win the European title in Heubergen. He would win a further 3 DVV Trophy rounds, sealing himself the overall as well. Hermans would also win a very first Super Prestige in Diegem and the first World Cup in Hoger Heide, a very successful season. At the Belgian Championships in Lille he would be third, a result he would replicate at the World Championships in Zolder, finishing only 5 seconds off the back of winner Elie Iserbyt and the runner-up Adam Tupalik. 2016-17 would be his final under-23 year, the year he started the bridge across to the elite. In the early season, Quinten finished on the podium of the Trek CX Cup. 3 days later he made his Elite World Cup debut with a very impressive 5th place in Las Vegas. His only other Elite World Cup race for the season would be days later in Iowa, where he took 7th. Throughout his final year in the youth categories he would win 9 times, the best season of his career so far. Those 9 wins included 4 Super Prestiges and the overall, 3 trophy rounds, a successful defensive European title and a first Belgian title since 2011. The World Championships in Biel would be ran on a frozen slippery course, where Hermans struggled a little bit and ended up only finishing in 9th place. And so Quinten Hermans became an elite rider, starting the 2017-18 campaign with a 12th place in Eeklo, before heading to the USA with a 2nd in the Jingle Cross, followed by an Elite World Cup podium in only his 3rd World Cup race. In Iowa 2017, Hermans would fight off Kevin Pauwels and Lars van der Haar to finish a hugely impressive 3rd. The rest of the season saw Hermans settle into being a somewhat standard Belgian fodder rider, grabbing top 10s in various racing, but not yet being at a hugely impressive level. A few podiums in lesser races like the Waasland Cross and Bredene, and 1 victory in the Swiss Meilen, meant that Hermans had a pretty decent debut season. At both the Euros and the Worlds he would finish 11th. The following year, the man from Tessenderlo would again take 1 victory, doing so in only his 2nd race of the season, the Trek Cup. Hermans would become a regular top 10 fixture, snapping up podiums throughout Switzerland and France. A solid, consistent season meant that Hermans would finish 5th overall in the World Cup, 5th in the Super Prestige and 5th in the Swiss EKZ Cross Tour. The Worlds and the Euros were again fairly average, 7th and 8th respectively. In the summer Hermans would win a first GC on the road, winning the prologue and 2 stages of the Flèche du Sud. This meant he would take home the overall, the points classification and the combination classification. Hermans proved himself to be a very capable road rider. The 1920 cross season would see Hermans again settle more into his role as a sub-top crosser, rising in stature as the years went on. He took 2 ATS cross victories, a home race in Beringen and the cross in Essen. Hermans would again take a small step forward, starting to take top level podiums with Super Prestige 2nds in Gieten and Boom. Hermans would also podium the classic Druivencross Overijse and take World Cup podiums in Zolder and a first Trophy podium in Lille. Whilst top level results were still missing, Hermans made a big step forward. His biggest step, however, would come in the form of a change of teams. In 2020 Hermans would sign with Corné van Kessel to a brand new cyclocross team, Doormans CX. With backing from road pro Conti team Circus Wanty Gobert, it meant that Hermans was now housed in a road team that had ridden the Tour de France before. Hermans' first road season for Wanty would end up being a bit of a failure. Covid struck, which messed up the whole calendar, meaning Hermans only really got a month of racing in before he was needed back in cross. His season started at Strade Bianche, his World Tour debut ending in a failure to finish the 1-day race. Hermans would also ride the Dauphiné, getting in the breakaway on stage 1, even claiming the King of the Mountains jersey. However, he would crash during the opening stage, being forced to abandon the race, his recovery counting him out for the rest of the road season. Hermans was still somewhat in recovery when the 2020-2021 season started, finishing towards the back end of the top 10 as he rebuilt his fitness. A 2nd place in Essen showed that Hermans still had some good things to offer. He was improving again, however it would take until February for Hermans to really come good. He would win in Eeklo, finally releasing the demons of the past months. A day later he showed he still had good legs by finishing 2nd in Brussels, another top level podium. He'd finished the season off with a 3rd podium in Oostmalle. However, Quinten Hermans' breakthrough really came just last season, For the first time, Quinten Hermans rode a full road season, as his Intermarché Wanty team moved up to the World Tour. Hermans started his season with an OK ride at Itzulia before heading to the Ardennes Classics. Hermans would make the front of the race in the Amstel Gold Race, finishing in 20th place. This was followed by an impressive top 15 at the Flèche Wallonne and a monument debut at Liège-Bastogne-Liège. Hermans' best performance of the year, however, would come in his Grand Tour debut at the Giro d'Italia. Hunting breakaways on various stages, his best finish was a 5th place on stage 15. Throughout the season, Hermans would prove himself to be a very competent road rider, and definitely someone who has the potential to go very far in a breakaway if he just has it go right for him. The lengthy road season seemed to benefit Hermans in the cross too. He showed marked improvement when the season started. He was second in Quinten before being probably the strongest rider in America. A crash took him out of the opening World Cup in Waterloo. He was the strongest and recovered for only a 3rd place. 3 days later, however, he'd put that right. On a drenched Fayetteville course, he blew away his rivals to take his very first World Cup victory. What followed throughout the season would be another World Cup podium in Tabor, super prestige podiums in Ruddervoorde, Niel and Max Plas, a silver medal at the European Championships behind Lars van der Haar, and a whole host of really good performances. Hermans would miss the top 10 on only one occasion, a 13th place in Boom, showing that he was now a serious contender on courses that suit him. See, Hermans had won the grand rehearsal of the Worlds in Fayetteville. He felt the course suited him and he was expected to do well. However, he was dealt a huge blow as he tested positive for COVID-19 and was therefore unable to make the journey to the World Championships to race them. Still working on handling this blow, Hermans has become centre focus in the news that his team, Tormans, is leaving Intermarché to join Quickstep. This news in its own right was huge for Cross. It meant Hermans, for example, would be leaving an OK Intermarché team to join a Quickstep team that is almost certainly the best road team in the world. However, even more recently, a massive bomb was dropped on this plan. Hermans, alongside teammates Corné van Kessel, Joran Wieseur and Emiel Verstringen, assigned to rider agent Hans van Kasteren, and Van Kasteren has sorted them a deal that sees them as a foursome move instead to apparently Alpecin Fenix. A huge blow to Tormans and a huge blow to Intermarché and a huge blow to Quickstep, especially because it's right around now that the 26-year-old seems to be really hitting his stride. Quinten Hermans has 6 elite victories to his name in 5 elite seasons, winning at least one cross every year as an elite level crosser. Those 6 victories consist of 1 each in Switzerland and the USA, 3 Etios cross victories in Belgium, and his crowning achievement thus far, the World Cup Fayetteville. At elite level, Hermans is yet to take any special jerseys. However, he's only 26 and has been showing very consistent improvement over the past years. He took 2 podiums this season at the Euros and the Belgian Championships. More victories and maybe even a big win on a special occasion is likely not that far away from Quinten Hermans anymore. Hermans' starring attribute is his ability as a runner. It's in the family after all. Hermans is amongst the best when it comes to longer, tougher running sections through sand or mud. Hermans is generally a power rider. His road efforts have helped him expand his engine to the point where he is one of the stronger riders in tough conditions, exemplified by, for example, his great win in Fayetteville. Hermans doesn't really have much of a weakness. He's a very solid all-round rider. If anything, maybe that is his weakness. He doesn't have a huge speciality, one real strength to exploit. He's a jack of all trades. Hermans settled somewhat into the role of an also-ran in his earlier years, but he's showing he's definitely good enough to win more, and I think he just needs to develop more of a killer instinct, and he could really be a good rider. Now, what Hermans' plans are for the coming year are a bit of a mystery, largely even due to the fact that he could be embroiled in some anger within his team. It looks right now like Hermans will be racing on the road for Intermarché Wanty-Gobert. He will then join Alpecin Fenix on the 1st of January 2023, if Tormans team manager Bart Wellens is to be believed. It could be a frosty year for Hermans. He's still stuck at Intermarché and Tormans for 10 more months, where a handful of senior staff members will feel somewhat betrayed. I do hope professionalism rises to the top of the team and they can still work out a decent season. Hermans hasn't let much be known about his schedule for the season, the big news being that he is on the 12-rider shortlist to ride the Tour de France for Intermarché in July. Whether he gets selected or not is still up in the air, but his road season is built around peaking for the Tour. I'd imagine this means Hermans will also target the typical warm-up races such as Paris-Nice and the Dauphiné, whilst I'd expect to see him race the Ardennes Classics too. Amstel maybe, something like that. He's good at those races. However, with this whole team debacle, it remains to be seen what exactly happens for Quinten Hermans. Nonetheless, he is probably this season's most improved rider in cyclocross, the one guy who really put himself up amongst the top end of cross and might just turn some heads on the road too. Keep an eye on him, he's a real dark horse to take some big wins this year. And with that, we reach the end of season 1, I guess, of these rider profiles. 10 riders, 10 profiles. I hope I've been able to give some more depth and some more knowledge about where these riders have come from and what their background is. I'm sure throughout next season, I'll be taking the time to talk about some of the riders I've missed out. Lars van der Haar, for example, feels like someone I really should have talked about by now, but I just haven't come round to fitting him in a nice and fitting way yet. But he'll surely be amongst the people I talk about next year. However, for the off-season, we're going to talk about some legends, starting off with none other than the cannibal himself, Sven Nys. Stay tuned, everybody.